Meaning like, any text file. So how do I read a text file? How do I write some data to a text file? How do I append a particular data to a text file? So basically read and write to a file, right? So let me just create a new file. You just create a new folder or a package here. I just created a new package called file handling, and within that I'm going to create a new Python file. File handling 1.py. Okay, all right. So as I said, file handling is it's a very powerful feature in any programming language where we are able to read from files, where we are able to read and write to a files. Okay, in Python also we do have this feature where we can always read from a particular file. So when we say read, so I can um, uh, so there is a text file. If you want to read what is there in that file, so what will you do? Let us say there is a text file and there is some content in it, and you want to read that. So what will you do?
We need to open that file.
First thing, you will open the file. Then you start reading the file. Yes. Now when you are doing it programmatically also, the first thing is you have to open the file. First thing is you have to open the file. Then the file handling will give functions to read data from it, right? So in order to open the file, open file, right, we have a function called open. We have a function called open itself. Okay, so open function, right, helps us to open the file. Now if I just say open, like there is, it doesn't know which file to open, right? In your computer there will be hundreds of files, thousands of files. Which file should I open? So there will be different folders, different paths in C drive, D drive, E drive and all, right? So from where should I open the file? So you have to give the file path to the open function, file path will be the first parameter. Okay, you have the first parameter will be, you have to give the file path. Okay, now when it comes to program, right, we have to be like strict with respect to why are we opening the file. Are we opening the file for reading purpose, or are we opening the file for writing purpose, or are we opening the file for a appending purpose? So there are different modes of the file. So how do I, what is the purpose of opening the file? So what is it called? Mode, right? So I have R mode, so which means read mode. Okay, it will not let you write anything to it. Okay, you can only read from that file. Another thing is W mode, which means write, you can write to a file. You cannot read what is there in it. All you can do is you can only write to a file.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you open in a write mode.
Yes, sir.
The point is cannot read. We cannot read. Only write. Okay. And here with the open function, so we have to give the mode. So the mode would be here. So if I have to open using this, for example, if I have to open using this, open, I will just say C drive, is it? Like, you know, this is how you write, right? C slash something like that, right? Okay, this is my path which is there in the C drive, and I'm opening this in the R mode. I'm opening this in the R mode. Right. The first is the path, second is the mode. Okay. Now when we do this, okay, so let's this is how you can open a particular file, R mode, write mode, and so on. Read mode, we know, right? Only to read, nothing much. It will not allow any other operation, only to read. Okay. Now, if the file path is not valid, as in the file doesn't exist, that is, the doesn't exist, right? You have given certain path, but in this path, this file is not there. That file is not there. Then this is going to give, this is going to throw file not found error. File not found error. In if at all, if that file doesn't exist in a given path, it will throw file not found error. Are we clear?
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Okay. Now this is with respect to read. Now with respect to write, so it cannot read, only write. Okay. Now every time we open for a write mode, it will erase the previous content in the file. It will erase the previous content in the file. If there was any content that was there in the file earlier, that will be gone. Any content that was there in the file earlier, that is gone. Okay, it will rewrite the data. Right, it will rewrite or it will override the existing data. It will erase the previous content in file. If you open it in a write mode, it will erase the previous content in the file. Okay, if file does not exist, it will create a file. Right here, it will not throw file not found error, rather it will create a file. It will create a file.
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Another mode is
Yes, sir.
append mode, which is A. Append mode is like, append means we can write. We can write. Append means like obviously you have to add some data to it, right? So which means you can write. But there is slight difference with respect to the write function here. So cannot read, only write. Now, when I open a file with a write mode, it used to erase the previous content, right? Here it will not do that. It retains previous content. Does not override. Does not override. If the file doesn't exist, append function is going to throw file not found error. Append function is going to throw file not found error. Clear? So read means it will only read, does not write, right? And if the file doesn't exist, it is going to throw file not found error. And then we have a write mode, which basically, okay, so this is better to read. Okay, so then we have a write mode. So it cannot read, only write. And it will erase the previous content in the file. If you open a file in the write mode, whatever was the content that was there in the file, it is erased. Okay, and if the file doesn't exist, this will create a new file in that path. Does not throw file not found error. Okay, then you have append function again, which is also used to write data to the file. So here you cannot read, you can only write. Okay, and it will like the write mode, this will not erase the previous content, it retains the content. Okay, and if the file is not valid, this is going to throw file not found error. Okay, let us see what each function, what are the different functions that are there and how do we open a file. So let me just start with the write itself, write mode, because if there is no file here, let us try to create one. Open, I'm going to say, I'll just give the file name here, I'll not give the path. Say write mode. And when we say open, right, it is going to give a file object for us. It is going to give file object for us, and I'm going to store that data into a variable called file, into a variable called file. Okay, let us see. One moment. I executed it. Okay, so if you see here, in this folder, is there anything called file txt here? In the file handling folder, right, is there anything called file txt here?
No, sir.
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
No, all we have is file underscore handling underscore one.py. Now, if I execute this, and since I have opened, or I have opened my trying to open the file in the write mode. What is the write mode? If file doesn't exist, it should create a file. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
right.
sir.
I'll run this. Let us see, like, if it actually creates a file. I'm going to run this. Okay. Before going to the output, do you see that is there a file created as file.txt?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right, so now this basically creates a file. So are we clear with the statement? Okay, we'll see the second statement in a short time. Okay, now this is a text IO wrapper. Text IO wrapper, meaning this is the data type of it, and it is the file object. It is the file object. If you see here, what is the name of the file? It's a file.txt. What is the mode? It is in the right. Right, so these are important. These are very, very, very important. So if you open a file in the right mode, right, right, it returns a file object. It returns a file object, and if the file doesn't exist, it will create a new file. Now, what I'm going to do, right? So I am going to write some content in it. Okay, this is some content in this file. Okay, right? There is this content. Now, what does if I'll try to rerun this file. Now, what does the second statement say? It will erase the previous content in the file. If I open the file in a write mode, it will erase the content in the previous file. Okay, it is ended H. It will erase the previous content in the file. So if you see, we have this content. Okay, see if I can put them side by side. Okay, I cannot, instead of putting top and bottom, I want to put them side by side. Okay, right. Just close all the unwanted. Okay, you see this? All I am doing here is open this file.txt in the write mode, which means the moment I run this, the content here should be erased. The content here should be erased. So that is why, like, I have kept both the files side by side so that we can see that evidently. Okay, now let us try to run this. What happened here? Where is the content?
It is deleted, sir.
Right, the content got erased, but the data is deleted. Right. So which means the second statement is also true. It will erase the previous content in the file. If you open the file in the write mode, it will erase the previous content in the file. Are we clear about it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right, I'm just writing some random content. I saved that file. Right, I saved it. If I run this, the previous data is gone. Okay. From here, now
Okay,
let us
sir.
try to write. File dot, you have a function for write. You have a function to write. File dot write. This is plus. Every time you use the write function, it will go to the new line. This is my first line. Again, we are using write function. I'm just writing 3 lines. Okay. Now, at the end of the file, once you open a file, after writing or reading, you have to ensure you close the file as well. You have to ensure you close the file as well. You should not leave the file open. Whenever you open a file, you should ensure you close the file. So in order to close the file, you have a function called close. You have a function called close. This is where we opened the file and here we are closing the file. Okay. You cannot leave the file open itself. Okay. Whenever you open a file, please also make sure you close the file. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to import something called time. Okay. And between each write, I'm going to introduce some delay. Between each write, I'm going to introduce some some delay. So what am I trying to do is basically we are waiting after doing this, waiting for 1 second, and after that 1 second, after that 1 second, so that you can see that what is happening here. Okay, I'm running this. It returned the first line. Okay, it has returned the both the lines also here. Right. Okay, so right line, sorry. Okay, right actually doesn't go to the new line every time. Right line is a different function, but rather I'll try to give the slash n. What is a slash n mean?
Go to the
Next
next line.
line, new line.
Right, it's a new line character. It's a new line character. Let us try to read on this again. Okay. Right, so this is a Python class. We are learning Python. Today's topic is file handling. So where we able to write? Okay, this is anyways not at real time. So only after the file is closed, the content is visible. So that is fine. The delay is not applied. Okay. All right. So every time I run this, it will erase the previous content and write the fresh content. So write is a function you can use to write data to the file, to write data to the file. Along with the write, you also have another function to write lines, write lines. So you have this function also, you can write multiple lines, you can write multiple lines. In order for this, it will take a list as a input, it will take list as a input. Right, let us say I have given four strings here. I have given four strings here, and I am giving that entire list to this write lines function, to this write lines function. Let me just execute this. Okay, wait a second. It should have write lines. You should have gone to the next line. Okay, so write line as an it even it needs a slash n as a special character. Now what is slash t? So it has come in a new line. Perfect. But what does the slash t doing? It is introduced. What happens? We just press a tab when you're writing something. It takes some spaces and goes towards right. Right? It tab space. It is a tab space. Okay. So this is all we have written, right? So see, if I have not used slash t, all of these are basically starting from the very start of the file, very start of the file. But the moment I use slash t for these things, it has given that space, right? And it has moved those names to a different path. Sorry, not different path, to for probably four spaces towards the right. Like it's like indented, right? Okay, slash t is basically a tab space. It's a special character, introduces a tab space, and slash n is a special character, introduces a new line. Okay, so write you can always write on a single string, but whereas write lines you can write multiple strings. Whereas write lines you can write multiple strings at one go. Okay, now let us see if it is allowed to write. I'm just going to say print file dot writable. Is it writable? Right, file dot writable. Let us see. It says true, which means we can write data to it. And let me just check print file dot readable. File dot readable. Does it allow to read? What does it say? False. Meaning you cannot read. We cannot read. Even after that, if I try to read file dot read, this is going to throw an error. This is going to throw an error. Unsupported operation. Unsupported operation, not readable. Not readable. So if you open a file for write, you can only write. You cannot read. You cannot read. Only write. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Clear, sir.
Clear,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right? So write is a function used to write data to a file. And if you want to write multiple strings in a different lines, obviously you have to use a slash n operator. And if you want to write multiple strings at one go, you have to use a function called write lines. You have to use a function called write lines. Any questions so far? Any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay,
No, sir.
right. So now there are three important things that we have done here. Three important things that we have done here. One, you have opened a file. Okay. While opening a file, you have given a path and the mode, either write mode, read mode, whatever. Okay. Once that is done, once that is done, right? Open the file with the file path and the mode, right? The second thing is you have made the operation. Since you have opened the file, you have made the operation either based on the mode. If you have opened the file for the write mode, you have written the content to a file using the write function or the write lines function. Using the write or write lines. Okay. And the third
sir.
is closing the file. And the third is closing the file. So these are the three operations that we have done. One, open a file, do the operation, which is the write or read, whatever. And third is to close. Whenever you open a file, please ensure you close the file. You have to close the file. You have to use the close function must. Okay, you have to close the file. Okay, now
Okay,
let
sir.
us go to,
Okay,
Okay,
sir.
sir.
let me create another file. This is for reading. This is for reading. Okay. Now file is equal to open, and I'm going to read from the same file. And what is the mode? R, which means read mode. So if I have to, the moment I open a file, I have to close the file. So I have opened, I have closed. In between is what I want to perform my operation, right? However, first we'll see whether it is a readable or not. Okay, whether it is a readable or not. I opened it in a R mode. This should let me read the data. This should let me read the data. Right? It says what? True, which means we can read content from this file. Okay. Now data is equal to file dot read. So we have a function called read. We have a function called read. Right? We have a function called read. So this reads data from the file. Right? Not one line, two line, all the lines, the complete content of the file. Read function reads content from file. So, and I have assigned that, right? It will read this complete file and stores this data into a variable called data. So I'm going to print what is that? What is the data that is there? So let me go execute this. Was this the data? This is the file that I'm reading, file.txt. First thing, when I opened the file in the write mode, it erased. But when I open the file in the read mode, did it erase? It retained the content, right? It did not erase anything,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right? And when I say read, it read the data and I printed that data. So this is this is the file content that is there in the file, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is how you read. And let us say I will try to read file instead of file1.txt. But do you have anything called file1.txt here?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
No. So if the file
No,
is
sir.
not there in the path and I am opening that in the read mode, so what error you will get?
File not found.
Right?
File not found.
File not found error. No such file or directory. No such file or directory. Here, see, that is the difference between the write and the read. And the read is like, I'm expecting, since I'm opening that file for reading, I'm expecting that file path to be present, right? And hence if at all, if you give a wrong path, it is going to give file not found error. It is going to give file not found error. But with the write mode, anyways, it is going to start fresh. Even there is a content, it is going to delete and recreate. And hence, if the file path is not valid or not present, it doesn't throw file not found error. Rather, it just creates a new file itself. Rather, it just creates a new file itself. Are we clear?
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Clear,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Now, just like read function, you also have something called read lines. I'm going to comment this read for a moment. I'll tell you why I'm commenting that. Dot read lines. Read lines. Okay, one moment. File.txt. I'm just changing the name of the file. Otherwise, it keeps throwing that error. Right? Each line is basically each line here is basically one element in the list. Read lines returned a list, but each line is basically one element in the list. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right. So read function just gave one string. Read function just gave one big string starting to ending. Done. Now read lines function, what it is doing, it is giving line and line by line, but it even this has read the complete file at once and returned a list of lines and returned a list of lines. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the read lines purpose is to return a list of the lines of the complete file. It reads the complete file and returns the lines, each line in a list. Returns the lines in a list. Clear?
Clear,
Clear,
sir.
sir.
Now I'm
Yes,
going
sir.
to uncomment this part. Okay. Now you have to tell me what is happening here. Okay. Let me just print the data first here. First read function read the file and we printed the data. So that this is the output for the read function. And read lines function is giving the empty list. Why? Okay. Now what happened when once you started reading the file, okay, you the file it already once it started reading from the first character. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The
Yes,
first
sir.
read function, first we used a read function, yeah. And the read function started reading from the very first character. And read function, what does it do? It reads from starting character to the last character. Okay. Now after reading the last character, where is your cursor? At the end of the file.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now read function read everything and the cursor is at the end of the file. So when you open a file, the cursor will be always at the first character. The cursor will be always as the first character. Okay. And when you read a file, the cursor, when you use the read function, the cursor, it reads the complete file, as in the cursor will be at the end of the file. Okay. Now done. That's it. We printed the data. It has given the data. Now after that, I'm saying file dot read lines. Do you have any content from this cursor?
No, sir.
No, sir. No, sir.
Because by the time you use the read function, it came to the end of the file, and the cursor is pointing at the end, and it tries to read lines from that point. It tries to read lines from that point. Since there is no content here, this will not read anything. That is the reason you are getting a empty list. That is the reason you are getting a empty list. Now, if I just do it otherwise also, whereas use the read lines first. Use the read lines first and use the read function later. Okay. Now let us do. So the moment you open a file, where will be the cursor? Starting of the file,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm going to run this. Now if you see here, only read lines, it read till here, all the lines completed. And now after that we are saying we are using the read function and it is not printing anything because there is nothing, no data for it to read from that cursor point. There is no data for the read function to read from that cursor point. Now you have one more function in terms of reading. Read reads the complete file. Okay. Read lines reads the complete file, but each line is a element in the list. Each line is a element in the list. And we have one more function for as read line. Read line. It reads one line at a time. It reads one line at a time. I'm going to comment this part. I'm going to say print file dot read line. File dot not read lines. It is file dot read line. As in it reads only one line at a time. It reads only one line at a time. I call the read line. So it just said this is a Python class and the cursor is here now. It read the first line and the cursor is here. Okay. And how many lines do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So every time I use the read line, it reads one line at a time. One line. Okay, this is the Python class done. We are learning Python done. Today's topic is file handling done. Right. The moment I use more and more read lines, it will not there after Joseph. It will not read anything. Your read line function will not be able to read anything because there is no content after that. There is no content after that. You can read one line at a time also using a read line function. After for the first read line, it read till the end of the line and went and stood in the next line. Again, we called a read line function. It read, we are learning Python, that line, and again it went to the third line. Third read line function started reading from the today's topic is file handling, and so on. Okay, understood?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? So your read line function helps you to read one line at a time. Helps you to read one line at a time. Okay. So you have a function to read, you have a function to write. Okay. Now in write you have only two functions, write lines. In read you have three functions: read, read lines, and read line. Read line. Read reads the complete file at one go. Read lines also reads the complete line at one go and returns a list of lines. Whereas read line reads one line at a time. Read line reads one line at a time. Are we clear?
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Clear, sir.
Okay. Now we'll try to create a new file and try to open the file in the append mode. Try to open the file in the append mode. For append mode, A is the mode, right? Append. Now file dot readable. Let me execute this now. I have opened the file in the append mode. Right? So readable, false, writable, true. Readable, false, writable, true. Okay. But if you see, I'm running this file. Did it erase the previous content?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. So whereas if I had done it with opened with the write mode, but it would have erased this content. But append mode and read mode will not erase the existing content. Append and read mode will not erase the existing content. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sir.
sir.
Right.
Sir.
Now this also will write. Right. I'm appending text. I'm appending text. So this will append the text from wherever is the cursor at the end. Wherever is the cursor at the end. Now, while in the second file, while we are writing, sorry, in the first file when we were writing, right, for after the Joseph, did we add new line character here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, right? So, which means where will be my cursor? The end of the file, which is
But
here. Okay, and let me execute this. Since my cursor will be here, where is it writing to? From my last point to it is writing. From my last point, it is writing. So after Joseph, there was no new line. So which means right after H, the cursor was, when you open the file in append mode, it is always pointing to the end of the file. The cursor is at the end of the file. And from there, it starts writing. So right after Joseph, that is where the file was, the cursor was at the end of the file. Okay. And from there, we have written I am appending text, and that I am appending text is appended right after the cursor pointer at the end of the file. Clear?
Yes,
clear,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So whenever you are appending, let us say I append and I'm going to the new line. right? Or whenever you are writing itself, you say like, this should go to a new line. Now, if I write this, right? So now it has written it here. The previous content is written and saved. The previous content is written and saved. Okay. Now, every time I run this, it is going to append the text to the end of the file. You see that here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay, so what are the first statement? If let me go back to the statements here. So write cannot read only write, right? It will erase the previous content in the file, and if the file doesn't exist, it will create a new file. But whereas the append, it cannot read only write. It retains previous content, does not override. Did we see that it overriding? No, right? Append mode.
No, sir.
Okay. Now, whereas the last point, let us try to see. Okay, I think I might be wrong, but let us see. File 2.txt here. Do we have file 2.txt here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Right. So I think it will create a new file and start appending to it, but let us see. Let me just run this. Yeah, it creates a new file. I would like, let me just correct the statement. The file path is not valid. This is just like this thing. It will create a new file. It will create a new file. If the file path exists, it will append from it. If the file path doesn't exist, it will create a new file and start appending data to it. Start appending data to it. Okay. If you see here file.p2, so it already has a content as I am appending text. The more I run this, the more I run this, so if you see, right, it is appending the text again and again. I run, there is the text. I run, there is the text. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Right, all three modes. Right, the homework now for you guys is there are two modes, two more modes. Right, I'll give you what are they. R plus, W plus, there are two more modes. Understand what are these. R plus means read and write. W plus means write and read. Now, just like we have written the behavior with the mode, right? Now you tell me what is the mode there. Okay. You have to
Okay,
write,
sir.
find out and write this behavior. Okay. This is one homework. Another thing is write a function. Okay. To take user input, write to file. So what should be the user input? File path will be user input. Okay. File path will be user input. Okay. Mode will be user input. Right. Content will be user input. I have to write a function. Basically, you take you know the input function, right? Take the file path, take the mode, and take the content and start writing. Right? So it should be a while loop which should which you will use to get all of this data, the user input data. And if user says certain operation as exit or anything, you have to stop writing or reading and then close the file. Okay.
Yes, sir.
You have to handle the exceptions also. It is possible if I'm taking the path from the user input, it is possible that that path can be invalid. It is possible that the path can be invalid. If it is invalid, it is going to throw an error and stop the program. But you have to handle that exception, which is the file not found error, and re-ask the file name. Okay, this seems to be wrong. Give me the file name again. Give me the file name again. You should be handling like that. Okay, this is your homework.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.